So, who here likes music? Pretty much everyone, right? Now, who here likes math? Like, oh, I just can't wait to go home and do some math. Not as many people, right? But what if I told you that music and math are intertwined in ways you probably wouldn't expect? The fact is they are, and I'm here to explain how. Because because music is a phenomenon of nature, not something we've discovered, it can be explained and expanded by math. So I've always been interested in math. I've had to take a lot of math courses here for my major, but I've also always loved music, so I've always tried to learn as much as I can about that. And this has led me to explore the relationship between the two. So first, I'll explain the physics and math behind what we hear, and then I'll explain how advances in math bring about advances in music. But before I do all of that, let me just go over a little bit of music theory, so you guys won't get completely lost in the gloom. But, in Western music today, we use 12 notes. You can see them all here. And a scale is where you start off one note and you go through a pattern to get to the next note. Conveniently for the C scale, it's actually D, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then from this C to this C is called an octave, because the notes in between in the scale have 7 notes, and this is the 8th note octave. If you use the C scale in a song, then that song is in the key of C. So all of the chords and all the notes you're going to be playing are going to come out of the C scale. And a perfect fifth would be from this C to this G. It's the 5th note in the scale, that's why it's called a perfect fifth. But basically those notes played together are going to sound the best to our ears. So these notes are actually sound waves, and these sound waves have 2 important characteristics: a frequency and an amplitude. So a frequency is measured in hertz, and the higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. The lower the frequency, the lower the pitch. And the interesting thing about frequencies is actually an octave is twice the frequency. So if you go back and you start at the C, if that was, let's say, 100 hertz, the C an octave higher would be 200 hertz, the next C would be 400 hertz, the next C would be 800 hertz, so it's always twice the frequency. And then the other important thing is amplitude. That's basically how loud the sound is. That's the pressure in the wave. So when these frequencies come together, they either form something called consonance or dissonance. Consonance is something that sounds good to us, like a nice sounding chord or something, but dissonance is something that doesn't sound good, it doesn't flow together. So something maybe you hear in like a horror movie or something would be dissonant. And according to Music and Math, The Genius of Beethoven, published on the TED Ed website, this is an example of consonance. You can see that the purplish line is an A, and the greenish one is an F sharp, and the blue is a D. And you'll notice that the A goes through, or the D goes through 2 cycles in this time period, and the F sharp goes through 2.5, and the A goes through 3 cycles. So that pattern 2, 2.5, and 3 actually sounds good to our ears. Now this is an example of dissonance contrasted with the consonance. So these 2 notes don't really line up at all together, and you can see that, and that actually doesn't sound good to us. So now that I've explained some of the physics behind music and what we hear, I'd like to show how understanding and applying math to music helps us to expand it. So you guys have probably heard of Pythagoras. He's the guy that came up with the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. He also came up with the Pythagorean scale. So basically he started at a root note, and he went up a perfect fifth, and then from that another perfect fifth until he got to every note in the scale. And he found out that if he kept going, eventually he would get to all 12 notes that we use. The problem with this, though, is that, that was according to Pythagorean scales, an article published by the University of Connecticut. The problem with this, though, was that if you started on C, let's say, and you went up a perfect fifth, and the perfect fifth, you get all the notes in the scale, you could only play in the key of C for that instrument. If you wanted to change keys, you'd have to retune everything and go through the whole process again to find all the other notes. Trumpet players would have to put down the trumpets and pick up a new trumpet for the new key, stuff like that. So eventually, mathematicians found out how to calculate the 12th root of 2. So that actually helped them to divide the octave into 12 notes of equal length. That meant that they could just play whatever they wanted and switch scales and without having to retune everything. Bach, according to Steve Copes, in an article called Combining Math and Music by the University of Chicago, was so happy about this that he composed the Well-Tempered Clavier, which is a book of 24 pieces written in all major and minor keys, just because it was so easy for him to do that all of a sudden with this new tempered scale that they came up with. So let's look at how math has changed music in the present. In the same article published by the University of Chicago, they talk about taking sounds from one thing and making them sound like sounds from another thing. So like they record the sound of a bell and then change the sound wave to kind of make it sound like a child singing. We also have synthesizers nowadays that let us change sound waves and manipulate them in ways that we haven't really been able to do before. We have software now that employs algorithms to do crazy stuff and allows us to edit music in ways we couldn't before. So math and music go hand in hand. Math brings about an understanding, and with that understanding brings about more possibilities.